And the U.S. has been asleep at the switch, and now this administration, we're going to go at warp speed over the next 1-2 years, and we're going to get out from under this sword that the Chinese have over us, and they have it over the whole world. And this time, we have rallied the allies, and so it is going to be all the Western democracies, the Asian democracies, and India are also going to join us in this in trying to form our own supply chain.
Alright, Shalom. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua, Hashem, Rakah, Kwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Akiam. And this is your brother Abawan back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua, Hashem, Rakah, Kwadash. All praises and glory is due, especially in the times that we're in. Right, so this is going to be my response to the Apostle Taha's video. Right, breaking news. Nero 47 declares war on America, Babylon, on Nigeria. Right, or I just say Nero 47, which is basically Donald Trump, the U.S. president, right, the president of America, Babylon the Great, and he has declared war on Nigeria. And this is, the Apostle Taha. So like I was saying, okay, this is the Apostle Taha basically speaking on, right, or doing a broadcast on what was going on in, or rather what Fox News reported on, right, where Trump basically said that he would, right, where Trump basically said that he would. And so talking about that, Jake has anything that we called, but like I was saying, right, so this is basically the Apostle Taha's broadcast where Trump basically said that he would, basically the reaction of the US putting Nigeria on, in a list of countries in special circumstances, right? And Trump basically coming out and saying, just like you see on the headline right here, right, he threatens Department of War, quote unquote, action in Nigeria, alright. And if you're actually on the ground, and hey man, a lot of jakes here in Nigeria are seeing what has been said, and you have mixed feelings across the board, right? Because due to these truths, okay, the men of the Lord being on the highways and byways, the Hebrew Israelites prophesying, right, you have a lot of jakes that have woken up to the deception and the wickedness of Esau Edom, so that are concerned and are basically saying that what this is, right, going from the quote-unquote Christian genocide here in Nigeria to the sudden compassion and sudden care, right, that America, Babylon the Great has for this situation, that obviously it's all a setup because, the US has interests that it's trying to pursue here in Nigeria, right? But for the most part, you still have a lot of our people, which is what leads me to the actual, purpose of doing this response right here, right? Which is to basically go into the scriptures, right? Because you still have a lot of our people, the vast majority of Jake here in Nigeria, they still trust in the shadow of Egypt. So let's get that precept, right? Let's get that precept. Let's go into that. Hold on. Alright, so this is the book of Isaiah, and I'll start from Isaiah 36 verse 6. Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed. On Egypt whereof if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him. And as we already know, and as you should know if you have been watching the Men of the Lord, right, starting from the elder apostles on down, that America, Babylon the Great, is spiritual Sodom and Egypt, where in our Lord Yahushua was crucified, which is why I'm bringing out this precept, right? If you trust in the shadow of Egypt, right, the shadow of Egypt, of course, referring to America, Babylon the Great, it will pierce your hands. And it's basically Ecclesiasticus, the 12th chapter, from the 10th verse on down. What I am trying to say to you is that, Donald Trump is coming out and saying, oh, right, we are going to basically, do some war actions in Nigeria, right? But from where I'm standing, Esau, Edom, Babylon the Great, NATO and the EU, so on and so forth, has always been at war with Jake and has always been performing war actions against Jake. In fact, the Islamic extremists that are performing the quote-unquote Christian genocide here in Nigeria, right, they reek of Edomites. What's what I'm looking for, right? They reek of Edomite backing. Okay, so let's go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, right? Basically, what I'm telling you, Jake, is not to trust in Esau, Edom, the so-called red man, because you still have a lot of our people that are saying that, hey, let's, Babylon come in, right? America will deliver us, because they have that spirit of trusting in Pharaoh. And you still have more of our people that say, well, America doesn't have any good intentions for our people, but if they are here, right? If they are here, the situation definitely will be better. And that shows you that the vast majority of our people are still under that Babylonian mindset. You are still trusting in your enemy. You are still trusting in the devil, in the shadow of Egypt. Ecclesiasticus 12 verse 10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness, right? And you believe that, these devils, they can actually do good. And that's the problem with Jake. You still trust in Esau. You still believe, right, rather than believing in what the scriptures say, in what the men of the Lord say about Esau, Edom. You want to believe in nothing, right? Because there is no precedent in reality, in history, or anywhere that informs you or that supports these ridiculous beliefs that you have for Esau, Edom, that somehow they can do something to your benefit. That has never happened. When have these devils done anything for your good? When have these devils ever interfered with your life and made it or pushed it for the better, right? When has that ever happened? Even when these devils were practicing their colonization here in Nigeria, so many people died. So many people were impoverished, right? It was so bad that Jake had to get up out of it, okay? Right? The situation here in Nigeria prior, when Esau, Edom was in power, it was the continuous oppression of our people. Now, continuing on, Ecclesiasticus 12 verse 11. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass. And thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. And eventually, these devils will show themselves, okay? They will always come out and show their true colors, okay? And that's really what I'm waiting for right now, because I'm still waiting for this story to cook. I'm still waiting to see what Babylon has in plan, or rather has in store, right, for Nigeria. So I'm not really going to say too much about this current situation, right? All I'm just going to say is, hey, you see what's going on, right? You see, okay, what Babylon is saying concerning Nigeria. Now, at first, they're coming out and saying that, oh, it's a country of special interest. And now Trump has straight up came out and said that, oh, we're going to send the military, possibly, right? Because you never know. That's why I said, let's just wait and see what happens. Because that's basically the position right now. The best position right now, right? Wait and see what happens. So you never know. Right, so don't trust in these devils, man. Just because you hear about, oh, it's America, oh, they're definitely, that's what Jake thinks, that big that good old America is going to come in and send their armies and beat up all these evil insurgents and walk away. But what you need to understand is that, look, man, the U.S. Army has, and this is just basically, let me go into something else right now, okay? Because you have already established, and before I go into something else, let me get another precept just to make sure that I beat the point home, okay? Let's look at another precept real quick. So this is the book of Isaiah 30 verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Right, and rather than you Israelites, right, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians in the time that were in to repent and return to the Most High Yahweh Basham Yahushai, you still continue to trust in the shadow, trust in the shadow of Egypt, right? Trust in all these different systems that have been set up by Esau Edom, okay? That's why you see Jake come out and say, oh, these Hebrew Israelites, what are these Hebrew Israelites doing? That we are so-called black people, right? Putting yourselves as in the identity, using the identity of black that was set up by Esau Edom, right? We as so-called black people have to come together and organize and build and so on and so forth, and you still believe that you can build a kingdom for yourself on this side, even though you have seen the result of all the times that Jake has tried that right in the past. So rather than repent and return to the Most High Yahweh Sham Yahshai, you still continue in wickedness. You still continue in the ways of the world. Isaiah 30 verse 2. They walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of sorrow of Pharaoh, shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. Right? And this is just me speaking as a man, but obviously it is clear that, okay, Esau Edom, the so-called red man, is planning, has interest here in Nigeria, which is why you see that these devils are pushing this quote unquote Christian genocide so heavily, right, to the point where even Trump had to come out and make a statement about it. And this is just me speaking as a man, alright, okay, on what I believe is coming up next. And I believe that the idea or the plan of Esau Edom is to try to build up either a military base or to deploy US troops here in Nigeria, specifically the northern part of Nigeria. Because let's go into this real quick, okay? Into this article real quick from the Chrome, right? So yeah, it is from the BBC, okay? And this is from the BBC. I think it was dated 19th of May 2024. US troops to leave Niger by mid-September, okay? The US and Niger have agreed that American troops will leave the country no later than 15th September, they announced in a joint statement on Sunday. They said the two countries had reached a disengagement agreement to effect the withdrawal of US forces, which has already begun. The US has relied on Niger as its primary base for monitoring regional jihadist activity. And the idea is that you used to have a US military base in Niger, okay? But ever since the new president of Niger had taken power, right? And I believe the president of Niger is General Chiani. I believe that is his name. And he had basically cut off relations, right? And kicked out all the soldiers of foreign militaries. So the French soldiers were forced to withdraw, and the same for the US soldiers as well. So basically, these Babylonians are looking for a new country to set up, right? A military outpost within the West African region. So most likely they have set their sights on Nigeria, and that's why they are creating this insecurity and destabilization in the region to make it easier for them to set up this military base. So what I want to do right now is I want to ask the chat, right? Because I do not believe that there is a military base, right, of the US or of any nation here in Nigeria. So let me ask the chat: is there a military base, or are there US US military deployed to Nigeria? Let's check that out. So let's see what the chat replies with. There is no official US military base in Nigeria and no indication of a large-scale US troop deployment there. Instead, the relationship is more of a partnership and training slash aid orientation. Right. So that's basically what you see, right? There isn't a military base or a large deployment of US soldiers in Nigeria. So what is most likely happening, and this is what I believe, speaking as a man, is most likely happening, and most likely the reason as to why you have this quote unquote Christian genocide, rather I should say a focus on, right, the insecurity here in Nigeria, because that's what it really is. Boko Haram has been operating for decades now. All right, Boko Haram did not start operating today. They have been operating for decades, and they have been murdering people, including these plantation Christians, for decades now. I have even done multiple videos going into that, right? The plague of the sword here in Nigeria, which goes back to when Boko Haram had done it, had basically, that was Boko Haram had basically put these Christian jigs to death, okay? So this is something that has been happening frequently here in Nigeria, but it has only gotten the focus, right, of the US just recently. Similar to how they are now seeing more and more information, more and more talk about the current genocide, or rather I should say the current war going on in Sudan, where you have the Rapid Support Forces of Sudan, right, which is a rebel military group basically attacking, killing, and rape, and raping the different regions that they have control over, right, fighting against the Sudanese government for power over the region. Because going back to here in Nigeria, the reason why you see so much talk, right, and so much concern about what's going on here in Nigeria is for the purpose of most likely to try to, create this narrative of insecurity and use that as a disguise to either bring in French or US military aid in the form of either a military base or troops and boots on ground. And a lot of you jigs believe that if that actually happens, if US troops or French troops, right, put boots on ground, that is a good thing for you people. But I would like you to know, but basically that is not the case, right? And we know that's not the case because we can simply look at the example of anywhere else that has US military bases. Korea, right? Japan, and I think Djibouti, right, here in Africa, has a few military bases as well. I think Kuwait also has a military base. All the places all over the earth that have US military bases, they know what, basically basically their condition did not get any better, right? And you don't want these devils out here, man. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to end the video right here. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High. Yahweh Shamya Washaiba Shamraka Kwadash, Wa of Bad Babal, and through the spirits of Yakem and Joaquas were edified. Shalom.